I woke up to the sound of roaring machinery and the unmistakable crunch of concrete being torn apart. My brain hadn't even fully booted up for the day, but my ears were already screaming that something was very, very wrong. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I bolted out of bed, nearly tripping over the pile of clothes I had left on the floor, and sprinted to the front door. The moment I yanked it open, my stomach dropped. My driveway, the one I had personally poured my sweat and money into, was completely gone. In its place was a deep trench. Chunks of broken concrete scattered everywhere like an explosion had gone off. A group of construction workers stood around, casually chatting, as a backhoe chewed further into what used to be my property. One of them, a guy in an orange vest and a smug expression, noticed me standing there barefoot and still half in my pajamas. He gave me a lazy wave, like this was just another Tuesday morning. "Buddy, beautiful day, huh?" Beautiful? My driveway was being murdered in broad daylight, and these guys were acting like they were planting flowers. I stormed over, my fists clenched. What the hell is going on here? I barked, my voice barely holding back the sheer rage bubbling inside me. The guy in the vest didn't even flinch. "Community project, sir. Courtesy of the HOA. You should have gotten a notice." Oh, I had gotten plenty of notices from the HOA before. One's complaining about my trash cans being out 5 minutes too long, or how my grass wasn't the exact shade of green they liked. But no, I hadn't gotten anything about a community project that involved obliterating my driveway. "Stop now," I shouted, but the backhoe kept digging. "Can't do that, sir," the guy said with a casual shrug. "We got orders from Trent Kensington himself. Big initiative. Something about improving neighborhood aesthetics and green space." Trent. Of course it was him. Trent Kensington III, the self-appointed king of our neighborhood. The man who somehow got off on making everyone's life miserable under the guise of community betterment. And now, he had decided that my property was his personal playground. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced my breath to steady and asked through gritted teeth, "And where exactly am I supposed to park my car?" The worker actually had the audacity to smile. "That's not my problem, bud." That was it. The last straw. I turned on my heel and stormed down the street toward the HOA office, my pulse pounding in my ears. Every neighbor I passed gave me the same look, sympathetic but hesitant, like they were too afraid to get involved. I could hear their silent warnings in their eyes. "Don't fight the HOA. You won't win. Screw that." The HOA office was a pristine, soulless building designed to make you feel small the moment you walked in. The walls were lined with plaques about community excellence and neighborhood values, which was just a fancy way of saying, "We own you." Behind the reception desk sat a woman who looked exactly as bored as you'd expect from someone working for the HOA. "Is Trent in?" I asked, barely keeping my voice from turning into a growl. She sighed, like she had dealt with this 100 times before. "Do you have an appointment?" "I have a destroyed driveway." She stared at me for a moment, then pressed a button on her phone. "Mr. Kensington, there's another one." "Another one?" How many people had Trent pissed off today? Before I could dwell on that, the door to his office swung open, and there he was. Trent Kensington III was the kind of man who had never worked a hard day in his life, but acted like he personally built the neighborhood from scratch. His suit was too crisp, his smile too rehearsed. "Alex, always a pleasure," he said, walking toward me with open arms, like we were old friends. "What can I do for you today?" "You can start by explaining why the hell there's a crater where my driveway used to be." I shot back. Trent's smile barely flickered. "Ah, the community project. Yes. I'm sure you saw the flyers. It's all part of the initiative to beautify the neighborhood. By destroying private property?" "Oh, come now, Alex," Trent said, laughing like I had just told a joke. "This is all for the greater good. We're installing a beautiful green space where unnecessary driveways used to be. It'll raise property values, make the community more eco-friendly." My driveway was not unnecessary. I snapped. "It was my property. You can't just dig it up without telling me." Trent clasped his hands together and gave me a patronizing look. "Actually, if you check the HOA bylaws, you'll see that we can make executive decisions regarding community improvements. And unfortunately, you happen to be in one of the designated enhancement zones. Enhancement zones. That was the kind of nonsense that came out of board meetings filled with people who had nothing better to do with their time. I took a step closer. Fix it. Now. Trent sighed dramatically. Alex. I understand this is an inconvenience for you, but the project is already underway. Reversing it now would be incredibly complicated, not to mention costly. And as a valued member of this community, I'm sure you wouldn't want to burden the HOA with unnecessary expenses. My jaw tightened, so hard I thought my teeth might crack. He was gaslighting me in real time, making it seem like I was a problem for being upset that my property had been destroyed. I exhaled slowly, feeling my rage settle into something colder, something calculated. So, you're saying this is final? Exactly, Trent beamed. But don't worry, you'll love what we have planned. There's even a grand unveiling next week. You're more than welcome to attend. That did it. The switch flipped in my brain. If this was final, then Trent and his precious HOA had no idea what they had just done. I smiled, a real smile this time. Oh, I'll be there, Trent, I said, turning toward the door. And trust me, you're going to love what I planned, too. As I walked out, I could already see the wheels turning. They thought they could steamroll me. They thought I would just accept it, like everyone else. They had no idea that they had just messed with the wrong guy. I was a demolition expert, and if they wanted to play dirty, they were about to learn that I played louder. The drive home was quiet, but my mind was loud. Every conversation, every smug smile Trent had thrown my way, every word that had dismissed my anger played on a loop, fueling the fire building in my chest. The HOA thought they had won. They thought I was just another homeowner who would roll over and accept whatever nonsense they pulled. They had no idea who they were dealing with. By the time I pulled into what was left of my driveway, my plan had already started taking shape. I sat in my truck, staring at the disaster in front of me. The construction crew was gone, but the damage remained. My underground garage was blocked, my tools were trapped, and my property had been torn apart without my consent. The normal reaction would have been to call a lawyer, file a complaint, and spend months fighting a losing battle against the HOA's ridiculous bureaucracy. But normal wasn't in my nature. I pulled out my laptop and started digging into the HOA's bylaws. If they were going to play dirty, I needed to find every possible way to make their lives miserable. It didn't take long before I found my first weapon. The so-called community project had been approved internally, but they had skipped an important step. The city required permits for any project that involved excavation near residential structures, and Trent, in his arrogance, had either ignored that or assumed no one would question him. That was a mistake, a big one. I made a few calls, speaking with people I had worked with in the demolition industry. One of them, a city inspector named Carl, owed me a favor. After explaining the situation, he promised to stop by and take a look. If what I suspected was true, the HOA was about to be hit with a very expensive problem. The next step was making sure the entire neighborhood knew exactly what was happening. I printed out fake survey markers, carefully placing them in front of other homes, just far enough from the destruction that they wouldn't immediately be connected to my driveway. Each one had vague codes and arrows, the kind of markings that looked official enough to cause concern. Within hours, the rumor started. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing with messages from neighbors, all asking the same thing. Had the HOA said anything about expanding the project? Were they going to start digging up other properties? People were worried. And that was exactly what I wanted. I took a step further. Using my contacts, I hired a few workers to come and evaluate my property. They walked around with clipboards, murmuring to each other, occasionally pointing at the destruction. I made sure they did it when the most nosy neighbors were outside. The gossip spread like wildfire. Trent's carefully controlled narrative was slipping through his fingers. He had counted on people blindly accepting his authority, but now they were questioning him. By the end of the day, the HOA office was overwhelmed with complaints. Trent showed up at my house that evening, his fake charm nowhere to be seen. He was flustered, trying to regain control of a situation he didn't understand. Alex, what's going on? I've been getting calls all day. People think we're expanding the project. I leaned against my truck, arms crossed. That's so? You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I smiled. Oh, I might have heard something. People are nervous, Trent. They're starting to wonder if their homes are next. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, clearly frustrated. There is no expansion. This was a carefully planned, controlled improvement. Shame no one believes you, I said, his jaw clenched. Alex, I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop. I pushed off the truck, stepping closer. Oh, it's not a game, Trent. It's just people realizing that maybe they don't trust you as much as they thought. He exhaled sharply. Fine, you've made your point. But the project is moving forward whether you like it or not. I watched him go, knowing this wasn't over. The next morning, Carl showed up. He walked around the site measuring, taking notes, and shaking his head the entire time. When he was done, he turned to me with a grin. They screwed up, he said. How bad? Bad enough that the city is going to have questions. They didn't get the proper excavation permits, which means this entire project is out of compliance. If the HOA can't provide documentation, they could be facing some serious fines, maybe even a full shutdown. That was exactly what I needed to hear. I wasted no time spreading the news. An anonymous email was sent to the entire neighborhood, outlining the legal issues surrounding the project. The subject line was simple: HOA caught breaking the law. That got people's attention. The fallout was immediate. Residents stormed the HOA office, demanding answers. Trent tried to do damage control, but the more he spoke, the more people realized he had no real authority outside of his inflated sense of self-importance. The local news caught wind of the situation, sending a reporter to investigate. The HOA had spent years operating in the shadows, making decisions without oversight. Now, they were being dragged into the light. Trent was livid. He cornered me in the parking lot after one of the emergency HOA meetings, his face red with frustration. You think this is funny? He snapped. I shrugged. A little. This could ruin everything we've worked for. I laughed. You mean you? Because as far as I can tell, no one else is too happy with how you're running things. His hands clenched into fists. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, I said, and I'm just getting started. He pointed a finger at me. You're making a mistake. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. No, Trent, you did when you messed with my property. I walked away, feeling the shift in power. The next day, construction on the project mysteriously halted. The workers didn't show up. The machinery sat abandoned. The HOA had been hit with an official notice from the city, suspending all activity until the legal issues were resolved. Trent tried to act like it was a minor setback, but the cracks were showing. I knew this wasn't over yet. He would try to regain control, to spin things in his favor. But I had more planned. I had barely begun. The HOA had gone silent. The construction equipment sat abandoned. The workers nowhere to be found. The once confident Trent Kensington III was now dodging phone calls and avoiding the very neighborhood he had once lorded over. The city had slapped an official cease and desist order on the project until further notice. And as much as Trent tried to downplay it, the damage had already been done. The residents were furious, not just at the destruction of my driveway, but at the sheer audacity of the HOA to make decisions without any input. For the first time, people were questioning why they had allowed this organization to dictate their lives in the first place. But I wasn't done yet. The final blow was still coming, and I had been planning it meticulously. The HOA had scheduled a grand unveiling ceremony for the project, a public event meant to showcase their so-called improvements. Trent had been bragging about it for weeks, before everything started crumbling around him. The problem was, he hadn't officially canceled it. That meant people were still expecting an event, and I was going to give them one. The morning of the ceremony, I arrived early. The construction site, which was supposed to be the crown jewel of Trent's reign, was nothing more than a pit of half-finished work, exposed rebar, and a giant, gaping hole where my driveway used to be. I had made a few calls and invited some special guests, including the local news, who had been keeping a close eye on the situation. If Trent thought he could still spin this in his favor, he was about to be in for a nasty surprise. As the first residents arrived, confusion spread. The HOA had done nothing to prepare for the event, yet people had shown up, curious to see what was going to happen. Trent arrived a few minutes later, looking irritated and overwhelmed, probably expecting a small crowd of loyal HOA supporters. Instead, he was met with dozens of angry homeowners, a few city officials, and a news crew setting up cameras. The color drained from his face when he saw the reporters. He quickly forced a smile and stepped onto the makeshift stage, clearing his throat into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming," he began, trying to sound as confident as ever. "As you all know, this community project was designed with the best intentions, to enhance our neighborhood's appeal and increase property values. While there have been some unexpected delays, I want to assure you that." His words were drowned out by a loud beeping sound. A large construction truck pulled up to the site, kicking up dust as it came to a stop right next to the stage. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand, and looked around. "Who's in charge here?" he called out. Trent hesitated, clearly unsure of what was happening. I am," he said hesitantly. The driver walked up and handed him the clipboard. "Got an order here for the final demolition and clearing of the site. Should be wrapped up by the end of the day." Trent blinked. "What? No. There must be a mistake. There's no demolition scheduled." The driver shrugged. "Says here it was requested by the homeowner whose property was damaged. Since the HOA project was declared illegal, the city approved the request to restore the lot back to its original state." Trent's eyes darted to me. I smiled and gave him a friendly wave. The crowd murmured as people started piecing together what was happening. The same HOA that had dug up my driveway without asking had now lost the power to do anything about it, and I had taken full advantage of the situation. Trent's face turned bright red as the news camera zoomed in on him. He fumbled with the microphone, trying to regain control. This is an outrageous act of sabotage," he sputtered. "This community project was meant to benefit everyone. We cannot allow one person's selfish actions to undo months of planning." I stepped forward, raising my hand. "Funny, that's exactly what I said when you dug up my driveway without permission. Except you didn't seem too concerned about community input back then." The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement. Trent was losing them, and he knew it. He looked around desperately, trying to find support, but even his usual HOA lackeys were staying quiet. I turned to the demolition crew. "Go ahead, boys. Let's clean this mess up." The beeping of machinery filled the air as the crew got to work. A bulldozer moved into position, its massive blade pushing debris into a pile. The same destruction that had been done to my property was now being undone, right in front of everyone. The final insult to Trent authority was watching his so-called improvements being erased in real time. The news reporters jumped on the moment, interviewing angry residents who had finally had enough of the HOA's control. The city officials, watching from the sidelines, started discussing the possibility of holding an official vote to remove the HOA altogether. Trent was completely out of moves. As the demolition continued, Trent stormed up to me, his voice low and full of rage. "You think you've won?" I smiled. "I don't think. I know." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You have no idea how much damage you've done." I leaned in slightly. "No, Trent, you did this. You thought you could control everything, that no one would challenge you. But you forgot one important thing." He glared at me, waiting for the answer. I grinned. "I blow things up for a living." Trent opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. There was nothing left for him to say. He had lost, and he knew it. The demolition wrapped up a few hours later, leaving behind a level patch of land where my driveway used to be. But that was only the beginning. The neighborhood had changed. People who had once been too afraid to speak up were now openly discussing the possibility of dismantling the HOA completely. The power structure that had kept everyone in check was crumbling, and it was only a matter of time before Trent and his little empire were officially removed. A week later, I poured a brand new driveway, better than before. This time, I made sure it had a special touch. Right in the middle of the pavement, in large, bold letters, I had the words HOA-free zone stamped into concrete. Trent never showed his face in the neighborhood again. The neighborhood of Willow Creek, now bustling with activity. Residents are gathered in the streets, discussing the recent events. Alex stands in front of his newly poured driveway, a satisfied smile on his face. The camera pans to the words HOA-free zone stamped boldly into the concrete as the sun sets in the background.